Hey, welcome everyone in this new video tutorial about the multiplayer combat editor. In this video we're going to review what you purchased using our content browser. So let's just open up our content browser. If you do not see multiplayer combat editor content, just go to view options on the top bottom right corner and show plugin content. So once you've done that, let's just open up the multiplayer combat editor folder and let's just check the graphics folder. It's just basic assets used by the blueprints in the editor. We do not care about that folder much. If we expand our blueprint folder, we can see we have a bunch of folders. So the interfaces are showcasing how in this video I'm also going to explain what labeling I'm using to explain what labeling and naming convention I'm using. So, and each asset has a description and it's telling you what you should be doing with the assets. So for instance, this is telling us that what it does and what we should be doing. We should be implementing that in one of our actor, and this will make us able to add action to that actor. So no worries if you do not understand how to implement an interface. If you do not know how to implement an interface, there will be video tutorials about this, about how to implement each of the things we're going to go through in that video. So these are just interfaces we're using to communicate. Managers are using to communicate with about the different type of things you can see here, combat stats, etc. The manager folder contains every manager we need to manage our multiplayer game. So these contain the functions modifying the action, the stats, etc. Whereas that folder contains allows the different manager to communicate with each other. This only allows them to communicate with each other, whereas they contains all the features and code we need to handle our multiplayer game. And this is just an interface I created to simulate the tooltips, the type of tooltips I wanted to have, and I didn't delete it because I still need the template of these tooltips. So the modifier folder, these are just the two elements we've been through in the previous videos. So the modifier and the trigger modifier blueprints, they contain the logic to modify things at runtime. The projectile is just the object being used by skills to when they need to spawn projectiles. This is the folder containing all of the skills and subclasses I talked about in the previous video. This is the status modifying stuff at runtime and communicating with the combat manager. In the widget folder, you have everything you need to display and react to events related to the managers. So, and you have some of them, we've been through some of them in our first video, and some of them are just pieces used to create the main HUD, the main widgets we talked about in the previous videos. And the utility folder is just other pieces to build the rest of the managers and the rest of the logic. So we might go over these things in some videos, but not that one. And the settings, so the maps folder is just, this is just an empty map. I will be deleting it by the time you get your hands on MCE. So the settings folder, this is the folder you will be modifying if you want to add new stats, new teams, new actions, if you want to modify how alliances work. So this is the folder you want to keep a backup of. You always want to keep a backup of your project anyway, but especially that folder, you want to keep a backup of this, because if you update MCE, it might erase that folder, and you want to import your list of action. You always want to keep your list of action in your game, in your project. So this is it for the plugin content itself. We're just going to go over the example content we added in the previous video. So we're going to highlight them, the example folder. We're going to highlight it, set color, right click on it, set color. We're going to make that green, for instance, a flat green. Okay, didn't work, I don't know why. We want that to be flat green, like that. So the example folder, let's expand it. We're going to go over from the bottom. So the widget folder, this is just a demonstration of how you can use the widgets contained here to display what you want, and especially especially how you can customize the theme of the widgets depending of your game. The weapons folder is a display of how you can. It's an example of a weapon system. So this is how you can create a weapon system using MCE. The utilities folder is only contains a few things. So the interface focusable and interactive are two simple example of how you can implement focusable objects. So how objects that are highlighted when you mouse over them, for instance, and interactive objects you can click and they do something when you click them. So statuses, this is the list of statues, the example of example statuses I built using MCE. Same thing for skills. They are all contained within a prefab folder, which means they are purely content oriented. What I mean by that is they do not create new feature, they only use the feature built. Same things for projectiles. These are examples projectiles. We're going to go over pickups afterwards. Same thing for modifiers. These are prefabs of modifiers. So talents are things that modify your skills, for instance. And you have your map folder. And the managers folder is where I created a child class of the combat manager, which allows me to customize what happens when a unit gets damaged. For instance, I added a burn effect to the fire damage type while doing so. So creating this allowed me to make enemies burn when I hit them with fire damage. Game system, these are just examples, pretty simple examples of how you can create a multiplayer menu which connects players with each other and starts game. And we're going to view the pickup folder now. So the pickup folder is just an example of how you can create pickup using MCE features. So these are actors which basically restore stats, create statuses, learn skills for your characters. And the destructibles are just new actors I created using the manager MCE provides. For instance, the target dummy is using the combat and the stat manager, and it takes damage and it can be destroyed, etc., etc. And the character folder is interesting because it features all the player archetypes I created for MCE, the FPS, top-down, TPS, and twin-stick player, which you can see and view to understand how to set up your player. And you can also copy and paste them. So I'm only talking about what the example content do. but there is quite a lot of things you can copy and paste and use and customize afterwards, and there are going to be videos about this. So how you can expand from my type of characters, I'm going to showcase it in some videos in the future. So, and the AI folder is pretty important because, excuse me, this is an example of how you can quickly expand, use the AI manager I created within MCE to use MCE built-in feature, combat feature, and stat feature. How AIs can use the features MCE provides, basically. So, and that AI folder as well. So, and this is the main one actually with the behavior trees, etc. So that's it for the contents and we can go over quickly the graphics folder actually, and we can highlight it. So it mainly contains particles effects from the Infinity Blades package, which is free to download on the marketplace, and it mainly contains animation from Mixamo, which are free to download from the Mixamo website. So and also it contains icons from gameicons.net, which is which are free downloadable icons. So that's it for the content showcase. So now that we showcased everything, we're going to quickly review how I labeled everything. So BPI, so in our MCE folder, blueprint interface, BPI means blueprint interface. So these are, I talked about it earlier, you implement that to your actors if you want them to communicate with other actors. BPC means blueprint component. BP means blueprint, like that, and they are all blueprint in there if I'm not mistaken. MC starting tutorial is just this is just a tutorial for the editor. It doesn't have any. MCE is just the prefix I'm using for things that are purely related to MC, but doesn't have a proper naming convention in place. So if I'm going there, all of the elements contained in the utility folder have the base Unreal 4 naming convention for every type of assets they are. For instance, Inium starts with E. So this is going to be important if you want to understand how examples are built afterwards. So widgets, they are called so widgets that are supposed to be displayed right away on your screen are called HUD, and widgets that are only part of another widgets are called WGT. And then you also have WGC, which is widget component. You also have MCE widget, which is a parent widget used by a lot of other widgets. And since it's a parent class, I used a quicker naming convention to quickly realize this is a core component, and you will mostly never do something in there. You will likely never do something in there. And what else do we have? I think that's it for that folder. And considering just the graphical assets, it has the usual Unreal 4 naming convention, material interface, etc. M and MI, for instance. And for the example, they follow the same naming convention than the rest of what I have showcased in the main MCE folder, except they have a X in their name. For instance, the manager, BPCX, BPX, etc. X means example, so you can quickly see what is an MC example and what is a core feature of MC, what you should not be modifying and what you should be modifying. For instance, if you are a a beginner or an intermediate user. And I also have another convention, which is PFB, which are the way I have to call everything that is not implementing new feature, but just using the feature built in. So these are basically content used to create, used in your game. So your abilities, your modifiers, your statuses, your characters, and stuff like that. So PFB, I'm using that convention. And I think that's it for the naming conventions I'm using. So it's going to wrap up the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.